Hey, what's going on, everyone? Today we are here with James, an entrepreneur from the U.S., but actually living. James, I'll let you introduce yourself. Say name, where you're from, and just a bit of background.
Hey everyone, I'm James. I'm originally from California. I've been living abroad for about 10, 11 years now, mostly in Asia. Recently changed up to Latin America. Actually, going to be heading to Argentina in the next 5 days or so.
Awesome stuff, man. So you had a pretty big month in August. Why don't you tell the listeners what you hit, and was that an all-time high for you?
Yeah, so we did 75K in August, and for e-commerce, yeah, that was the all-time high. Really exciting. Had some huge sales come in, which were unexpected, and I mean multiple huge sales come in. So yeah, it's just really cool.
Do you know were those sales from ads? Like were they B2B sales or were they consumers?
Let's see, so a few of them were just like $14,000 products that the person just came onto the site and bought, and the others, one of them was like an $18,000 sale, and that one was actually a customer who came to me the month before and just came back and bought four of what he bought initially. So
Oh, no way. No way.
yeah, yeah.
Good stuff, man. That's awesome. So you mentioned you've been away for quite a while now in e-commerce now. What type of business experience did you have before you got started in e-com? Like how long have you been doing e-com specifically and specifically high ticket?
So I've got a pretty in-depth background with marketing. I had a startup that did extremely well, and I actually got originally started in SEO. So I had some SEO affiliate sites that I sold back in 2018. And after that, I had dabbled with some e-commerce stuff that had initial successes here and there, ups and downs, but ultimately just couldn't push those like I did with the SEO stuff and the startup I was involved with. And so this venture that I've been doing recently is actually the first really like successful e-commerce stuff I've pushed.
Have you been using SEO expertise from the previous one at all on this store? Or have you just been focusing on ads for now?
So I am formulating a pretty massive plan for the SEO stuff, but I've just been absolutely distracted with the ads, launching new campaigns, bringing on brands. It's quite a bit of operational learning that I need to do. It's not something that's my strong suit. I'm a marketing guy, so learning the operation side of things has been a little bit complicated, but it's a fun
I'm the
process.
same way, man. Yeah, I love the marketing side. Anything that's like SOPs,
Yeah,
operations, anything
yeah,
like that. It's about yeah, not even close to as enjoyable. So I resonate heavily with that.
yeah.
Um, so is it just you running the store right now, or do you have any team members, VAs helping you out with certain things?
Yeah, so I'm pretty lucky in the fact that I have had previous pretty large successes with my other companies. So I do have a fairly large piggy bank I can kind of dump into this. So I immediately, and I do have experience with hiring. So pretty much as soon as I got started, I hired a full team. And so that's how we've been able to, we were able to launch, the product pages is a massive part of this entire business model. And so we were able to launch that, well, utilizing AI and scale that really, really, really hard. I mean, we launched an enormous amount of product pages very quickly, and that has been super beneficial.
So how old is the store now? Like when did you first launch this store?
So actually, I initially launched it back in November and had no clue what I was doing. My buddy kind of got me into it, and then I got more and more into it. I actually was in a different course, and initially I was like, man, this is pretty comprehensive. This is a lot I need to learn. But over time, I kind of got the hang of it, and then in December, got banned on Google, which was devastating and very scary. And then luckily was able to get back that I think in March, and from then, basically since March, it's been like full blast. Like let's just go.
Awesome stuff, man. So how long did it take you to get the first sale? So you started, I guess you had the store before, but went full on in March. Were you making sales right away, or did it take a while to ramp up a bit?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I feel like there is like always like super beginner's luck with this tough type of stuff, at least for me. And so the first like few days I ran ads, I made like $500 profit. I was like, oh my God, like I'm gonna be rich. This is amazing. And then like the rest of the month, it was almost like a month and a half of like absolutely no sales, no calls, no messages. I was like, man, that sucks. So it took a while, but then once I mean, obviously, Joel is super helpful, and so I like talking with him a lot, seeing like where my just really, really understanding the model more has helped me focus on the products that are successful and really scale those up, and kind of the ones that aren't really converting very well, kind of just remove them from my bandwidth.
Yeah, and that's honestly, man, like it's a super common thing I see when people get started. It's like I don't even know if this necessarily happened with you, but a lot of time people will start closing their first brands and they'll almost have like rose-colored glasses on just because they're so excited they've closed a brand that they don't like actually consider the margins and the brand and demand and stuff that they just start running ads to brands that might not do that well. But then ultimately, like once you get over that point and you actually start looking at things objectively, that's when you can really start getting on good brands. And it seems like that's what you've started to do at least the last couple of months, which is taking things to the next level for you.
Yeah, so that was a big difference between your course and the other course I did was they didn't really focus on like what a good brand is, and like the enforcing map is like for me the most important thing. Like a brand that actually really enforces map is amazing. Like you can be like, all right, so I just have to make sure my website looks the best, has the best content, all that stuff. I don't have to worry about people undercutting me, like that. Like those types of little things are absolutely massive.
I completely agree. Yeah. And a lot of times people will think, like, even when we say enforcing map, but then people will just sign a map agreement and assume that it's being enforced. But a lot of the time, if you actually just go look at, like, Google Shopping, it's really not at all. You
Yeah.
have to, like, really kind of stay on top of that stuff. It doesn't always have to be you. But that kind of leads to my next question. So do you have the VAs, the team you hired, are they just doing product pages, or what exactly are they doing right now versus you?
Yeah, so I've got kind of a lot of moving parts going on. I'm actually in the process of hiring an operations manager finally, so
The
that's
best
gonna
thing ever.
yeah,
The best
that's
thing ever
gonna
for a
be
marketer. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm really excited for that. But as of right now, I pretty much I enjoy taking phone calls. I enjoy talking to the person, and so I'm doing the phone calls. I'm doing the customer support quite a bit, and the VAs are doing product uploads. Obviously, there's quite a bit of development stuff we're doing, like just changing things up, making the page look nicer, all that. And then I do have a process for checking competitor prices, making sure they're following map, and then I report them if they're not, which has been very helpful. And actually, the suppliers they appreciate that, so they appreciate me sending that stuff over for them.
Best of both worlds. They don't have to monitor their brands, and you don't get undercut and stuff. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So big month in August. What do you think are the main bottlenecks or things you need to do to the business to get to the next level? Like let's say consistent 100K months. What do you think's between where you are right now and getting that? Is it a couple suppliers? Is it dialing in your ads with your existing ones?
To be honest, I when I can really 100% focus on just ads, even I like taking the calls, but eventually that would be I'll probably have to outsource that. But when I can just focus on ads, bringing on new amazing suppliers, and that's really like my 90% of my workload. I think that's where we're really going to hit it, and I can really focus on the SEO side of things as well. Once we can really spend a lot of time on that, because the niche I'm in has an unbelievably high search volume for kind of generic keywords, and that are it within the niche, And so when I can focus on that, that's going to be it's going to be huge. So yeah,
That makes sense, man. Yeah, like a lot of the time, people like doubling their business. It's just a matter of dialing in ads with their already existing brands. Like if you're getting like whatever 10, 12 to 15 extra rows on a brand, you can easily double the spend and still maintain above 10 a lot of the time. So it's
Mhm.
really just in a lot of times it can be uncomfortable to spend more on ads, but that's kind of ultimately what you have to do a lot of the time. So with your store, I actually had to look at it before our call. Super unique niche. How did you end up picking that? Was that like did you do a bunch of research and identified the potential based on the SEO beforehand, or what factor do you think that's played in the success so far?
So it's been good and bad. it is a unique niche, but is really cutthroat and really like competitive. There's quite a few, I would say, unethical people that are in the space that undercut, violate map, and I'm constantly reporting them. And yeah, it's that they will check my prices, and I can see them on my site. They add to carts and all that, and they're just like they're always checking my stuff. And so it is pretty cutthroat in that, but it is huge, huge, huge search volume once you get that dialed in. But how I found it, it's kind of tertiary to another niche. And so I actually started with another niche, and I was working on that, which was kind of a popular niche that I'm sure a lot of people have looked into. And then that was going to be my initial niche. And then as I started bringing on suppliers, looking at competitors, I was like, oh man, there's a lot of people that are selling these types of products as well. So that's kind of what it slowly morphed into.
That's a lot of the times the case. Like people will, when beginners are starting, they're super nervous about picking their niche. But a lot of the time, it's almost always what you pick right away isn't what you end up with. Like usually you have to pivot, be a bit flexible, and then kind of add different product types to your stores, and eventually one of them will take off. But don't definitely can't box yourself in on day one.
Yeah. Yeah. And even now I'm finding some product types that are like, oh man, that's really popular all of a sudden. And like I'm getting tons of sales for it out of nowhere. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm gonna add on more of those products. I'm gonna go research more of those suppliers and bring those guys on. So
There's always that's one thing I've learned is even when you think that there's products that nobody's thought of before, like I still will have people submit niche sheets, and I'm like, what the hell is that?
yeah,
Or what?
that's gotta be pretty interesting to be able to see all the niches people come up with.
Yeah, some of the product types you would be mind blown. It's crazy, but I'm sure every niche has at least some like that where there's like a ton of untapped opportunity just by kind of thinking outside the box, looking for those other product types. So,
Yeah.
with the suppliers to this point, has there been a pretty even distribution of sales, or has it been kind of like 80-20 for one or two?
Yeah.
What's the breakdown look like?
Yeah. I basically, yeah, I mean, I have one supplier. We've done, I think we spent maybe $1,000 in ads at this point, and done like $30,000 in revenue with them, maybe even more.
Wow.
Actually, quite a bit more than that. Yeah, and they are also, this is my best supplier for sure. They also have they enforce MAP, and they have a great margins, so 30% margins or so on those.
Wow.
So yeah, yeah. So they've been awesome. And then I've got one other supplier. Margins aren't that great, but high price points, and they have enormous search volume. So that one I have to be kind of careful with, just to not make sure I'm spending too much, but and always watching the ROAS on that. But yeah, they're good as well. So but it's
Yeah.
basically two main suppliers that are the vast majority of my revenue for sure.
That was when I got started. I had, yeah, I think like two or three that were almost all of it at the beginning. But that's,
Yeah,
yeah, you made a good point on the price point. Like usually I say like 20-25% plus at least. But if you're selling like a $12,000 item or something like that, and you have like 15 to 17, it's a lot easier to get a 15x ROAS on a $12,000 item than it is like a one or two. So you can usually get away with that, especially if there's good volume.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. And that was the thing as well, is when I first got on board, I thought, oh my God, dude, I'm a genius. Like I'm so good at this. I onboarded like 50 suppliers right away. And then I realized like most of these aren't gonna make me any money. Actually, most of them are just spending money. So yeah,
yeah, like a lot of the time that happens is people kind of get excited, they get all their first brands on, like the margins aren't great, but you just kind of have to be a bit cutthroat with where you're going to spend your money because
yeah,
once you get a couple good ones, like you don't need a whole bunch of winning brands. You only need a couple really really good ones to do well.
yeah.
Um, so what are your goals for the store? Do you want to build this up as far as you can? Do you want to build it up and then sell it once you get to a certain point? Do you want to have a few different stores? What are your long-term goals in high ticket ecom?
I'm actually like I've been playing around with that idea recently. When I originally got started, I was planning to just sell the site. I was like, oh, I'll launch it for like 2 years and I'll sell it. That was my initial plan. But there's a few publicly traded companies in here, in my niche, and I think I'm doing a better job than them, like on the online side of things. And they have storefronts as well, so that's something that I could potentially get into as well. I mean, it just depends on like, so for me, the the limit for this is, a 50 to $100 million company.
Yeah, honestly,
The
there's no real limit to it, which is cool.
Yeah, yeah. And so I'm basically just trying to figure out if this is what I really want to spend my life on for the next like 4 to 5 years. I think it's totally possible. It's just, all right, is this really, really, really what I want to do? I do see a path to getting there. And so that's potentially what I'm going to do, but I'm still just playing around with the idea. That would probably require me moving back to the States though, and which I'm
Yeah.
okay with. I'm getting a little bit older now, so looking for somewhere to settle down.
Very similar to myself. Like I imagine that I'll eventually try and do something with high ticket ecom in my own brand. Like I actually already have that going, but I'm probably going to need to move back from Dubai in the next couple of years to make that happen. But
Yeah.
it is the cool thing about the business model. You can really grow it as big as you want. But I resonate with your point a lot. That like in your lifetime, you only really have time to build like one or two businesses all out. You can't you can't do a million different things. So it's a really good question to ask yourself. Is like, okay, I see the opportunity, but is this actually what I want to do?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So it's not something that like really super duper fulfills me, but I do enjoy the process of like optimization and growing this as huge as possible. So I'm just trying to figure that out right now. But yeah, I think that it's it it's already got a lot of traction, and I it could grow into something that I really enjoy operating. So
Good stuff, man. Well, last question for you. If you could give yourself advice 6 months ago, or someone who's considering getting into high ticket ecom, what advice would you give them? And just overall feedback about the program specifically and how it's played a role in your journey so far.
man, I'm the type of guy that I get into a business or I get into something and I really just like throw everything at the wall and I see what sticks. So I made a lot of mistakes at the very beginning for sure. So I've got a list of things to warn myself of. But I would just say definitely spend more time with your really, really, really understanding each supplier. Understand like, okay, do they have good margins? Is there shipping included in their price? Because that can be surprising. You're like, oh, they got 30% margins, but the shipping is 10, 15% of it.
Yep.
So watching out for that and making sure, I mean, the map enforcement, really, really checking into that, and so not investing too heavily if basically really just watching your suppliers and getting a strong idea of each supplier so that you're not investing heavily into each one. And it takes up an enormous amount of bandwidth as well with that. So I would say really understanding your suppliers and um, yeah, I think that's probably the biggest switch for me was just understanding your suppliers.
I agree. It's by far the biggest needle mover. If you actually have real good suppliers and you do the ads properly, very hard to not do well. Like if you just do those two things, and it's just the thing is, it's super simple, but it's very hard to do right. And a lot of people like think they're doing it right, but they're not. But if you just really really understand those two things,
Yeah, yeah, and I love the way that you teach the ads as well. It's a lot different than what I'd learned in my other course. It's just a lot more. I'm someone who really likes to optimize things and get in really deep with the
yeah,
ads. And so, I mean, with the product groups, all that, like, the way that you structure those, I really, that was a huge game changer of when I came into the course.
awesome stuff, man. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on. Thank you very much. Um, Excellent interview. Any final thoughts?
Just don't give up. Don't give up. I mean, it's with anything, if you just completely put yourself into it for a long enough period of time, it's going to work out. It's if
Yep.
you're following all the rules, and that's the biggest thing. Is I was really frustrated and scared for the first 2 months. I was like, man, I'm putting all this time into this. It's not working out. What am I doing? Blah blah blah. And I was actually even making good sales, but my suppliers were terrible, and so I was actually like break even almost. I had like $10,000 sales and didn't make any money, and so yeah, just keep going, keep knocking at it, keep trying to understand things, and yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Cheers.
Awesome.